The silence of a high-end, Michelin-starred restaurant isn't the peaceful kind. It's the expensive kind. It's the type of quiet where everyone pretends they are better than everyone else, and sound itself feels too poor to smudge the polished mahogany tables. I had spent 6 meticulous months planning my mother-in-law Eleanor's 60th birthday gala at this exact venue. I personally coordinated with the events manager, selected the rare French wines, handled the catering for my sister-in-law's highly specific dietary restrictions, and spent hours arranging the floral displays. I booked a private room for exactly 14 people, counting every family member, our close friends, my husband Mark, and myself. Or so I thought, until I walked into the private dining room in my emerald silk gown, only to find exactly 13 chairs around the beautifully set table. Every single chair was already occupied. My husband Mark was sitting near the head of the table, laughing at a joke, and right next to him, in the seat that geographically belonged to his wife, sat Chloe, his brother's wife's sister, a woman who had been inserting herself into our family gatherings for over a year. As I stood at the entrance, freezing under the crystal chandelier, the laughter at the table died down to a suffocating whisper. Mark looked up, completely unfazed, adjusted his designer bow tie, the one I had bought and ironed for him, and gave a theatrical shrug. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with casual malice. "Looks like we miscounted the RSVPs. Honestly, Sarah, this place is a bit too refined for you anyway. You're more of a casual diner than fine dining material. Maybe you should just grab a cab back home so we don't ruin Mom's seating flow." The humiliation didn't hit me like a wave. It settled into my chest like liquid nitrogen. I looked around the table. Eleanor was sipping her vintage champagne, deliberately staring at the oil paintings on the wall. Mark's brother smirked, and Chloe looked down at her bread plate with a guilty, yet victorious grin. In that exact 10-second window, 5 years of marriage flashed before my eyes. I remembered driving Eleanor to her medical checkups while Mark had to work. I remembered managing their family's messy finances, paying off Mark's brother's secret debts to keep the peace, and constantly shrinking myself to fit into the suffocating mold of the elite family. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as the hired help, and the help doesn't get a seat at the main table. But Mark had forgotten one vital thing about me. Before I gave up my career to support his high-flying corporate ambitions, I worked as a senior forensic auditor for international corporate fraud. I didn't just understand logistics. I knew how to find things people desperately tried to hide. And just 4 days prior to this dinner, while printing the final seating chart from Mark's laptop, a notification popped up. It was an email from Chloe with the subject line, "Next weekend." I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I simply opened his emails and spent the next 72 hours methodically downloading everything. I found an encrypted offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands registered under a Shell LLC that Mark had opened 6 months before our wedding. He had been systematically siphoning our joint marital assets, moving over $1.2 million into it to prepare for a clean exit, all while conducting a passionate 14-month affair with Chloe. The moment Mark told me to take a cab home, the last tiny shred of hope I had for my marriage evaporated into the expensive restaurant air. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I slowly walked over to the table, set my designer clutch down on the white linen right in front of Mark, looked him dead in the eye and said, "You're right. I am not family after all." I picked up my clutch, turned on my heels, and walked out of the room with my posture perfectly straight. The moment the heavy oak doors closed behind me, I pulled out my phone and dialed my attorney, a ruthless, top-tier divorce lawyer whom I had secretly retained 48 hours ago. "Send the courier inside," I instructed calmly. "They are currently on the second course. Let's give them something substantial to chew on." Exactly 25 minutes later, as Eleanor was giving a toast about family legacy and pure bloodlines, a professional courier dressed in a sharp black suit entered the private room. He walked directly past the waiters, ignored the security, and placed a thick, wax-sealed black folder right onto Mark's dinner plate, directly over his untouched ribeye steak. The courier muttered, "Mark Harrison, you've been served," and vanished. Inside that black folder was not just a petition for a high-asset divorce. It was a comprehensive, certified forensic audit report detailing Mark's hidden offshore accounts, the exact IP addresses used to transfer the stolen funds, and 80 pages of time-stamped, explicit text messages and hotel receipts documenting his affair with Chloe. According to Mark's cousin, who texted me in absolute terror an hour later, the aftermath was glorious chaos, because the folder contained financial documents proving Mark had also stolen from his own brother's trust fund to finance Chloe's luxury apartment. The family immediately imploded. Mark's brother threw a wine glass at his face, Eleanor fainted into her truffles, and Chloe was left sobbing as the restaurant staff desperately tried to usher the screaming family out of the establishment. Meanwhile, I was driving across the state line, listening to my favorite playlist, watching the city lights fade in my rearview mirror. For the first time in 5 long years, I wasn't breathing the suffocating air of their expectations. I was entirely free, incredibly wealthy after the court awarded me 70% of the siphoned assets due to fraud, and finally sitting in a seat that was entirely my own.